My name is Sarah Corcoran. Welcome to the second Clean Energy for All call. Tonight, we will be doing some introductions. I also am a huge fan of GIFs, so there are a few sprinkled throughout this, this conversation. I will try not to have too many. So our community agreements for this evening, as we are having our discussion, as folks are coming off mute to say things, just be respectful that only one person should be speaking at a time. Introduce yourself before you speak so that everyone else knows who is speaking. And if you want to add something in during open discussion, during the question and answer at the end, you can add yourself to a stack in the chat box, which essentially means if you write the word stack in the chat or raise your hand, then we'll acknowledge that you're going to be the next one to speak. While you are speaking, try to limit the amount of jargon or acronyms that you use, so that way we can be respectful of folks that may not understand what all of those acronyms and abbreviations mean. And it's okay for us to be a little bit raggedy this evening. Not everything comes out of our mouth perfectly the first time around. I know that personally. I mean, based off of the technical snafus that I already had this morning or this afternoon, we're already off to a good start. For those of you who don't know how to use Zoom or haven't had a lot of experience with it, if you look down at the bottom of the Zoom window, you'll see this handy little bar down here at the bottom. If things get a little bit slow for you this evening, you might want to turn off your video. That usually helps. Make sure that you are muted during the duration of the presentation, and you can unmute yourself towards the end during the question and answer section. You can also see where the little chat icon is. Feel free to put anything in the chat during our conversation this evening. And you can see how many different people are on the call in the little participant window. Now, if you go and open the participant tab, you can click on the 3 little dots next to your name to rename yourself. So that way, if we wanted to talk to you during this conversation, it's not like Randy's iPad or iPad number 3, it'll have your name. So if you could do that now, rename yourself with your name and your pronouns so we know which pronouns to use. And I will change my name right now as well so that it has my pronouns on it. There we go. Okay, and while everyone is doing that, that shows where the chat is again. Let's go ahead and test out that chat function right now. In the chat box, if you could please put your name, your pronouns, where you are located, and what you hope to learn from these conversations. I would love to see that. And Phyllis, I see your question about anti-RGGI legislation. We do have a section of our call that's devoted to RGGI. So as I said in the slide, just introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, location. And if you don't know what it is you hope to learn from these calls, that's okay as well. You can just say what your name is. I will go ahead and continue as folks are introducing themselves. Hi, everyone. I see names popping up. Yay. And let's see. Oops. Technology. There we go. Aha. If there are those of you who don't want to introduce yourself in the chat, we're going to have a chance to talk with other folks on this call a little bit in this next section. We're going to break out into breakout rooms. I know everyone's favorite thing when it comes to Google and Zoom and all of the other platforms that we use, but we'll break out into a few different breakout rooms. Give it about 10 minutes. Introduce yourselves to other folks in the room. You are all folks that are interested in energy work throughout the state. So it's great to pick brains about what interests you in energy work, where your passions lie, and maybe you'll meet a connection that you weren't even aware of from across on the other side of the state. So I will, as folks are still putting their intros in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and create some breakout rooms. And that should be good. So you will get a little notification on your screen that says that I'm inviting you to a specific breakout room. You can click on that and go say hello to some new friends. And I'll see everyone back in about 10 minutes. Haha. All right, everyone is back. 10 minutes flies when you're just getting to know each other. But I figured that it would be a nice break from just writing about yourself in the chat to actually get a chance to talk to some of the other folks that are working on energy stuff within the state. So I hope that it was a good conversation and we can continue on our way. So our next slide is just a quick overview of the agenda for this evening. We've already done welcome and introductions. Next, we're going to hear an update from some of the campaigns working on energy stuff within the state. And then we're going to have a lovely presentation by Kelsey Krepps, our senior dirty fuels representative, and learn a little bit about some pipeline infrastructure within the state. So with that being said, Clean Energy for All overall is a collection of all of the different facets of energy work happening within the state. We realize that there is a little bit there, well, not a little bit, but there is overlap between our fossil fuel work and our clean energy work. There's overlap between clean transportation and all of the other aspects of our energy work. So we decided to make an integrated energy plan that would combine all of those facets together. And here we are now with our Clean Energy for All campaign. Our vision is that we envision that Pennsylvania will run on 100% clean renewable energy by 2050 in all sectors, and which is built on a foundation of equity and justice, leading to the reduction of economic and racial inequities and contributing to good jobs and healthy, livable communities. So that's the big overarching goal. That's our vision. How are we getting to that? I will turn it over to some of our other folks within the state that are working on our clean energy work to hear some of the different updates that are happening within the state. Tom, did you want to take over and I'll advance your slides for you?
Yes. Yeah, and I was planning on taking the next 4. Welcome everyone. One of the big things that we are working on right now and have been working on for the past, oh gosh, almost 18 months now, is a rule that would cap greenhouse gas emissions from the power sector and join Pennsylvania into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a multi-state program that's growing. It was 10 states when we started. Virginia is now joined, and North Carolina is also in the process of joining. And Reggie puts a declining cap on CO2. It decreases at a rate of about 3% per year. And Pennsylvania would be a major development for us to join, because we have so much generation in our state that we would nearly double the total amount of capped emissions in the RGGI program. So Governor Wolf proposed this back in the fall of 2019. Last year, it went through draft rulemaking process, notice and comment. I recognize a number of folks on a call tonight who participated in that in one form or another. Last week, the DEP came out with their proposed final rule, and it goes through advisory committees next week. And then the next major milestone is a vote by the Environmental Quality Board. We're expecting that to happen in July. And then it will hopefully be approved for final publication and go into effect after that publication happens in the fall, when the Independent Regulatory Review Commission votes on it. That process does not involve a public comment period, but running parallel to that, there is a plan that DEP is developing on what to do with investment of RGGI proceeds. So the allowances for carbon dioxide are auctioned off, and that's going to return, depending on the price, somewhere between $300 and $500 million a year to Pennsylvania that can be invested in programs, hopefully programs that will help reduce pollution in environmental justice communities, help grow the clean energy economy, and help folks with energy efficiency. And so we are going to be reaching out to you all and to supporters throughout the state when that goes to public comment, which we expect to happen sometime in late summer. Right now, what we're focusing on is beating back attempts from the legislature to block this rule from going through this finalization process. Some of you, depending on what Senate district you're in, you may have gotten a action alert or a text from one of us late last week or early this week to contact your senator. Thank you to all of you who took action on that. If you did not receive one, you will probably receive one for your House member soon, because we have a limited number of sends that we can do, and we have to try to win as many votes as possible. So we're trying to be strategic about where we send those messages. But it would be helpful, even if you didn't get contacted for that, it would be helpful if you're interested in writing a letter to the editor, or posting some content on social media in support of RGGI, and we can get talking points and things like that to you to help with that if you're interested. One interesting wrinkle on this, unfortunately, is that the Senate Republicans are kind of taking a play from the book of the federal Senate, and they've now threatened to block any appointments to the Public Utility Commission from the governor for the rest of his term until he withdraws from RGGI. We'll see where that goes, but that could potentially threaten the ability of the PUC to have a quorum later this year. So it's sort of like some trench warfare happening there on the political front. But I think the governor's resolve is firm. The question really is whether or not there's a political price to pay down the road and whether Reggie remains durable after his term is up. Next slide, please. All right, so I mentioned in the breakout room that the legislature in Pennsylvania was a pit of despair. And as I was putting the slide together, it just sort of reminded me of the steeplechase, which is like, if you haven't seen it, it's this like crazy race in the Olympics where you have to jump over these huge hurdles and for no good reason land in a puddle. And it feels like that when you're lobbying in Pennsylvania, because you're kind of running around in circles, fighting bad bills that come up over and over again. And a lot of them are actually being voted on this month because it's budget season and they're lining up bills to use as leverage against the governor for budget. And so some of the things that we're dealing with right now are deregulation of the conventional oil and gas industry. That bill could be voted on the floor soon in the House. That would allow things like road spreading of oil and gas wastewater on roadways, for example, and reducing the requirements for spill reporting and things like that. Just really bad ideas that could actually threaten the ability of Pennsylvania to regulate and permit under the Federal Clean Water Act. There's also a whole slew of bills that are rolling back permitting authority of DEP or enforcement authority. Many of these bills have passed in the House. Some have passed out of committee. Some were passed in previous sessions and vetoed by the governor. But we want to make sure that they don't continue to gain momentum or gain votes to allow a veto override. And then another bill is a preemption of local governments that want to ban new gas hookups or adopt zero carbon building codes. That's Senate Bill 275. That received a hearing today. We actually, I think that the sponsor was a little bit surprised by the opposition to that from some folks, not just us. I think he was expecting us to oppose it, but the Municipal League opposed it. And so he was a little bit on the defensive, I think, which is good. That one we're afraid is going to end up in the budget, inserted into a code bill, which makes it harder to veto. So we're trying to make sure that it is viewed as toxic, if at all possible. And then on the next slide, there are a couple issues in the legislature that we're working on that we do hope will pass at some point. They're not where we need them to be right now. One of them is the community solar bill, which is Senate Bill 472, has not been introduced in the House yet. This is not the same community solar bill that we supported last year. There's a very different structure to it. There is a direct subsidy for solar developers that we think is actually not structured well and could end up being bad for the industry and create another boom bust cycle. And the solar installers themselves are kind of split over whether this is a good thing. We think we can fix it. And hopefully if we can get these amendments introduced and adopted into the bill, we can be fully supportive, and we'll keep you posted as that changes. And then electric vehicle charging infrastructure, there's a Senate Bill 435, which is similar to what we supported in previous years. We're trying to get some improvements that would make it happen faster at the PUC in terms of the process, the planning process it would have to go through. And then House Bill 1285 is a new one that has actually got more momentum in the House. But unfortunately, that has a gas infrastructure expansion component too. So we obviously can't support that while that's still in there. I don't know what the prospects are for amending it out yet. But that makes it, I think, harder to pass the other charging infrastructure bill. So I know we get some inquiries about the status of these bills. We are engaging with our coalition partners on a regular basis, trying to and work with champions in the legislature to try to improve the language and get them moving. And then the last slide, I know I don't want to take up too much time. I had 10 minutes. Sarah, do I have I run out of time here? Can I cover this, or should I follow up later?
You're pretty much at time, Tom,
Okay.
but Kelsey, if you mind if Tom runs a little bit into your allotted time?
Just 30 more seconds, I can get through this.
All right, well, since she's not saying anything, I say.
Okay. Yeah, this is I wanted to flag for those of you who are in Philadelphia, if you've not engaged in this yet, this is an open public comment period that we're engaging in right now, which is the diversification study of the Philadelphia Gas Works. Philly has committed to be carbon neutral by 2050. They can't do that with the largest municipal gas utility in the country, so they're trying to figure out what PGW looks like going forward. There's a draft study that was just released, and public comments on that are due by the 28th. It's a pretty short turnaround time. I'm working on our comments, and I think I'd like to encourage folks who are customers to weigh in as well. And so hopefully we can get an alert out by the end of the month that would allow you to sign a petition related to that. And if you want to write your own letter to the editor or something, I can give you talking points. And that's all I got for now.
I would very much appreciate some personal discussion on the PGW issue. I used to serve as the public advocate representing PGW's customers. I spent some time working at PGW trying to make it more just and open. So I would like to continue that discussion at some point with you.
Yeah, great. Steve, I will, I'll put my email in the chat and we can follow up.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for that quick overview, Tom. We'll still have a little bit of time at the end of our call today for question and answers. So if you had any other questions related to any of the updates that Tom gave, keep those in mind or put them in the chat and we'll make sure that we get an answer to them before the end of the evening. And with that being said, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Kelsey and let her talk a little bit about the pipeline infrastructure that is going on within our state. Take it away, Kelsey.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, y'all. My name is Kelsey Krepps. My pronouns are she, her. I am the senior campaign representative with the Beyond Dirty Fuels campaign in Pennsylvania, and I'm based out of Pittsburgh. So good to see y'all today. I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick overview of some of the pipeline projects that are happening within the state. Apologies, I'm a little out of breath. I literally sped out to take the dog outside real fast before this whole thing got started, so I'm catching up here. But Dirty Fuels within the state is really fighting back against proposed gas projects and expansion of those of gas in the state. So pipelines, LNG facilities, anything that's going to be making it a much larger impact for industry production in the state. So that's a really top level overview. I'm not going to go into all of this for the Dirty Fuels, but I did just want to kind of introduce the campaign and just talk a little bit about that side of some of the energy work. I know Tom did a really great job of talking about some of the other clean energy and other sides of the work here in the state. So Sarah, I kind of have, okay. So one thing I wanted to start out with first and foremost is within Pennsylvania, we have a number of pipeline projects that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, but there are a lot of other projects within the state that I won't be mentioning. There's some gas plant facilities that are associated with pipeline projects that I won't be mentioning either, but I wanted to share this really great resource that we have on our website here. So if you, after this call, when you get the slide deck and all of the resources that are going to come from this meeting, if you go to that sierraclub.org/dirtyfuels, gas plants and pipelines, this interactive map here allows you to scroll through the entire US and essentially toggle between a pipeline that's already operating, a pipeline that's been terminated and is no longer even being proposed, and a pipeline that's planned. And if you zoom in to Pennsylvania, you'll see a lot of the pipelines that I'm going to kind of discuss today. What's really interesting about this map and why I find it really helpful is thanks Sarah for putting that link in the chat. One of the reasons that I love using this map and find it really helpful just like to conceptually think about pipeline infrastructure in the state is a lot of times right now industry is kind of rewriting and rethinking about older tactics. So they're thinking about putting pipeline next to pipeline that's already existing. That's kind of an easy way to go about the business. Another thing is retrofitting old oil pipelines in the state. So that's another tactic that's being used. And so a lot of times based off of momentum from a lot of other campaigns to stop bigger pipeline infrastructure. Sorry, my partner just got home and so the pups are pretty excited to see him. But so within that, again, just talking about that overview of pipeline projects in the state, and I very much so lost my train of thought. Sorry, y'all. But with this, it's really great to just kind of see where the infrastructure already is, where it's most likely and could be kind of expanded or rethought about in terms of some of that work. And then also speaks really truly, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, to some of the movement and how that momentum is really building. We don't see a ton of just brand new pipeline projects in the last few years being proposed. Some of them were proposed, the ones that I'll talk about were like 2017, 2016, 2014. But in the last couple of years, it hasn't really been optimal to kind of promote some brand new stuff. And they'll then come up with really funny ideas like a virtual pipeline, which I know some of y'all on here, like I think I saw Diana's name earlier. We definitely did a webinar on that, and that's going to be linked in one of the resources here. So apologies for that long-winded overview, but I really love this map, and it's a good thing to toggle around to kind of just get a good look at Pennsylvania from the state perspective and that wide view. So Sarah, can I have you go ahead? So I'm going to quickly say a couple of things about this particular slide. These are the pipelines and virtual pipelines that I'm going to be talking about tonight. And again, this is bird's eye view of some of the stuff that Sierra Club and the Dirty Fuels campaign have been engaged in. And I will just go through a couple disclosures real quick. We are not the only ones working on these projects. There are a number of coalition partners and other folks that have engaged on these projects, were engaging on these projects long before I was hired, and volunteers here who have been engaging on these projects as well for long before I've been here as a staffer. So I just want to name that. And I also want to name that obviously this isn't all the pipelines that are being proposed or existing for the state. So these are just the kind of ones that I've been engaging in, or we have close partner relationships that we've been engaging in, and maybe we've been signing on to comments or things like that. So that's a top level quick thing there. And then I think there's one more thing that I kind of wanted to settle with for us. Actually, Sarah, can you have you go back? Okay, these are set up in a way, you know that whole community agreement, permission to be raggedy? We're just gonna go with that tonight, y'all. So really appreciate y'all. I have this list in this way for us to take 3 seconds to kind of think about the state of Pennsylvania in our mind and just how it looks, bird's eye view. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start in the western part of the state. We're gonna move ourselves across into the eastern part, and it's gonna be very much so like we're going on a journey. We're following a path. We are following where I'm at to where some of y'all are at. And that's kind of how I wanted to put it today, is just going from the west to the east. Little journey here. Sarah, can I have you go ahead? Thank you. So the first pipeline that I'm going to talk about is the Falcon Pipeline. And there's a long history here with a lot of problematic construction. Right now, what's going on is there's investigations right now about the construction reports being falsified for this particular pipeline. The People Over Petro Coalition, who's linked here in the slide, is calling for an independent investigation of this pipeline and for the construction operation of the line to be halted until it can be proven that it's safe. There's a lot of history with this particular pipeline. There's a lot of history in this area, including an explosion a few years ago. And so this link to the People Over Petro Coalition is also a link to sign this petition to send signatures to the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. And I'm going to actually drop that link in here for y'all if you did want to go ahead and take an action right now. And I have a couple of these notes for actions plugged into some of the slides here. But this one is one that if you take a couple of seconds here, go ahead and just like take that moment, send your name, and that will be a great opportunity for us to continue adding some names against this project. I should also say that this is what's connected to the Shell the cracker plant that's in Beaver County. So that's that giant facility that's going to be cracking ethane into making plastic pellets called nurdles. And then it's a baseline product of a lot of other plastic industries. So it's going to be a huge emitter of greenhouse gases in the area and a lot of volatile organic compounds as well. So it's expected to come online within a year, I believe is the last update, but construction's been delayed and for a significant amount of time. So still kind of in the works, but we're doing everything we can in terms of pushing back on some of this. And this is sort of the latest efforts about pushing back against the Falcon is signing on to this petition to continue with those investigation efforts. Can I do that? Thanks. Okay, so another coalition. Like I said, our partners are incredible, and the folks who do a lot of organizing outside of me and my bits of involvement with these are incredible again. So the Mariner East 2 pipeline, if we're thinking about that state open view, follows the route of this red kind of line within the Halt Mariner Now campaign logo. So it crosses the state. So it's the thing that's going to connect west to east. It goes across 17 different counties. This has been a really problematic pipeline over the years that it's been being constructed. There have been over 320 spills of drilling fluid. There was a huge 8,000 gallon spill in Marsh Creek last August, if I'm getting my dates right. And there's been a number of sinkholes, damage to roadways, drinking water. Last week even, there was a family showing pictures of their bathtub water being brown and contaminated on a local news channel. And I know some folks here who are associated with pushing back against this pipeline on the eastern part of the state, where most of the construction and issues are continuing to happen. The last thing I want to say about this one, and again, just bird's eye view of all these pipeline projects, is that there are permit applications that are going to be out for public comment. They are out for public comment. And there's a public hearing for those on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 6 p.m. So if there's anyone here who wants to have some talking points for that, I can definitely connect and we can kind of work through and maybe have some folks turn out to testify at that public hearing. Give me just a second, please. Sorry.
Wow.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Can I have you go ahead? Oh, actually, really quickly, we are also involved. The Halt Mariner Now Coalition and movement did this people's hearing. It has a number of wonderful resources about the Mariner East pipeline on their website. But if you click some of the photos that I've put into these slides as well, they open up to either hearings or webinars that we've done or just general resources. So I did want to just name that. Okay, speaking of the industry wanting to just retrofit or do the easy route, or kind of do whatever makes the most sense for them economically speaking. This is the Adelphia Gateway project, and it is the bottom yellow here. The PennEast one is labeled. Thank you, Sarah, for using your mouse for that. It's wonderful. This is a retrofitted pipeline that's in the northeastern Pennsylvania, and it's going to the Marcus Hook facility in Philly. That's also where Mariner East 2 connects, is this industrial complex at Marcus Hook. So there's a lot of infrastructure projects that kind of lead down into the Philadelphia area. Permits were approved for this back in September of last year, but there was a significant modification to their permits just earlier this year. And so there are some technical comments that we have out right now with Clean Air Council. And that's pretty much where that's at right now. I just wanted to give an update on that. Thanks, Sarah. So this is the really interesting one, or one of, I guess they're all really interesting. They're also all industry, just we're doing all that we can and everything like that. But for the PennEast Pipeline, this one's all the way up at the Supreme Court right now. So this pipeline spans from Pennsylvania up in Luzerne County in eastern Pennsylvania down into Mercer County in New Jersey. So the reason that this project is really interesting is the state of New Jersey's been doing a really great job of holding construction for this based off of the ways that they've argued against some eminent domain issues. Which I'm not going to get into eminent domain in this call, but that's a really great thing that we will be talking about in our Pipeline 101 series that I'm going to suggest at the end of all of this. So again, there's a lot of issues with this particular pipeline, but number one, the state of New Jersey's been holding the companies that are involved up in court, and it's now all the way to the Supreme Court, where it was heard just a couple of weeks ago in the end of April. With a decision from the Supreme Court coming in June. So we should know whether or not they are going to side with the pipeline company or the state of New Jersey. I do want to note that in those, in the reading of that case in the Supreme Court, the folks that were representing PennEast actually said that if New Jersey, the state of New Jersey wins this case, they will not be pursuing the part of the pipeline that is in the New Jersey side of this. However, I do want to note that sort of one of the ways that the industries that are involved have sort of divvied up and created smaller phases of this particular pipeline to try to get around some of the legal issues that were happening in New Jersey with the court cases. So there is a proposed phase 1 and phase 2 for just the Pennsylvania portions of the pipeline that was originally proposed. And there was a hearing, a public hearing actually it was earlier this year in January. Dates are weird in COVID, y'all. But there was a hearing earlier this year in January or early February, if I'm remembering that correctly. And there is still an expected second one for other parts of this particular pipeline in Northampton and Bucks County. Next slide. Okay. This last one here, well, it's not the last one, sorry. This is another expansion project. So this is sort of something that if you were to look at that gas pipeline map that we showed in the very first couple of slides here, you see that there's this really giant pipeline project called Transcode that goes across the eastern side of the US. And that's this like red dot here, red dotted line. What I did here was enlarge the regional energy access expansion. So you could see that it's just kind of adding a good 30 some miles of pipeline to an already existing pipeline infrastructure. And what that's doing for this proposed project is increasing its abilities to add to that line and to bring gas to the other parts of the eastern part of the US. So there's a proposed new compressor station. And like it says here, there's a 22.3 mile pipeline lateral in Luzerne County. and a 13.8-mile pipeline loop in Monroe County. And it's interesting that this kind of came about around the same time that PennEast started to experience some difficulties within court systems. So this is something that industry itself saw some competition to provide extra resources to markets, and followed suit in terms of expanding on expanding infrastructure already in existence to try to meet some of those demands. I will say that the New Jersey chapter of the Sierra Club has worked with me and the Dirty Fuels campaign to file to intervene on the project. So legally and opportunities to be involved, we are doing that. I'm gonna check my time. I think I've got 1 or 2 slides left. Okay, this is the last one. So to get around some regulatory challenges, there has been a proposed virtual pipeline within the eastern part of the state, and Sarah knows this very well. And Diana, who's on the call right now, is actually featured in the webinar that's linked here from earlier last fall. So this virtual pipeline up in northeastern Pennsylvania in Wyalusing starts in Wyalusing, Pennsylvania, at an LNG facility. So this is a liquefied frac gas facility. It's taking gas and shrinking it down to 1/600th of the size in liquid form, so it's easier to transport. In this process of transportation for this pipeline, it's using trucks and trains instead of an actual pipe with compressor stations and pumps and everything like that to transport the LNG from this landlocked facility in Wyalusing to Gibbstown, New Jersey, where an LNG export terminal is located and was approved last December by the Delaware River Basin Commission. You can check out the webinar here for a little bit more information on that, but this is just another example of like the creative ways that industry is kind of trying to get around or think about how to go about projects that are not necessarily completely underneath a regulatory oversight that's already in existence. And so we have intervened as well on the Wyalusing facility. So that's my quick overview. I talk fast. This has been pretty, bubbly, but up in the air. And I know what I didn't do is basically get into any of the specifics about what permits you have to have, where, what kind of local, state, federal levels for some of that stuff. I didn't talk about the environmental implications. I didn't talk about health risks. I didn't talk about just other ways about being creative, but fighting back on some of this stuff. And so I want to gauge after the call today and see if folks are interested in having like a Pipeline 101 series. There are folks on this call who have been really active in some of these. Like I'm seeing Bernie on here. So there's been folks on here who've been pretty active in some of the infrastructure projects. And I just want to see if we would like to do a 101 series. I can definitely put some of that together. I think that would be a really great opportunity for folks to learn some of that kind of behind the scenes. I mentioned probably some of the regulatory agencies involved. So if folks are interested in something like that, I'm gonna send a follow-up survey after this. So I'm really hoping that we don't go too far over, but that's my stuff. Let me know if y'all have any questions, and please feel free to reach out anytime if you're seeing some of this kind of stuff pop up within your area.
All right, if you would like to reach out to Kelsey, her email address is on the bottom of this next steps slide. We will be sending out a follow-up email after this call with the recording from this webinar, the slide deck, and a list of all of the resources that were mentioned during the call with links that you can click on. So if there's anything that you wanted to dig deeper into, you should have those resources shortly. There are other steps that can be taken in the meantime. Our next clean energy call is going to be planned for June 29th. It's the last Tuesday of the month at the same time. But if you would like to be more involved in our statewide conservation teams, we have both a clean energy and a dirty fuels team call that happen once a month. You can reach out to Jim Wiley, who has been coordinating those calls. His email address is on the screen, or you can check the Pennsylvania Sierra Club website to see the dates when those meetings are put up. You can also reach out to myself. My email is on that page as well. And Randy, if you wanted to chime in for a second, I know you had something that you wanted to add as well with your email contact at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I just, for anybody that might live in Armstrong, Indiana County, Cambria County, Westmoreland County, those areas, if there's anybody out there that wants to contact me, I'll be working on some conversations around Reggie, but also longer term on, there's 4 coal plants left in the state, 4 conventional coal plants left in the state, and they're all in that area. So we're going to work on those as well.
And I do realize that it was a very full hour call. But for those of you who do have questions, if you would like to stay a little past 8:30 to ask any of those questions, please feel free. We will stay around as long as y'all need us to. Or if you have a hard stop at 8:30 and you'd like to drop any questions in the chat or send me an email with those questions, I can make sure that we get answers to those after the call. So if anyone has any questions for any of our presenters tonight, please either come off mute at this time or pop it in the chat.
Diana Dakey here. Is anybody making comments and sending them into DEP on those WMGR 123 waste fracking wastewater general permits? Those are the ones that, you know, DEP revised the general permit and then they automatically re-permitted over some 60 facilities. And then after a bunch of environmental groups fought back, they put them out for comment individually. So I just requested from the DEP office the one from the Standing Stone facility, which is the Eureka facility. And I did get this report of all these volumes of liquid coming in and then liquid going out. And I also requested the bonding information. Yeah, I still need to take a closer look, but it looks like Eureka is taking this fluid into Standing Stone in Bradford County, and then they're treating it, and then they're sending it down to Williamsport, but they're also sending fluid back from Williamsport. So I was going to reach out to the DEP person, find out, you know, why is Eureka sending fluid back and forth between these 2 facilities. But I didn't know if in general on the general permit, no pun intended, are there some comments that we should be making before May 19th, which is the deadline in the Federal Register for making those comments?
And that's for the beneficial reuse of fracking fluids, right, Diana? That
yes. Right. It's called WMGR 123 is DEP's name for the general permit. And it's for the beneficial use of fracking fluids to process them and then reuse them in fracking. This particular facility, I'm not sure they're reusing it in fracking. I want to get more information to find out where the fluid's going.
I know that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I want to make sure that it isn't all going and being compound, you know, putting a compound someplace for eventual road spreading or some other, you know, use. Is DEP going to keep really tight records of fluids in and fluids out, so that, you know, how does anybody know whether it's actually being put back into fracking and not just being disposed of? How would anybody know?
I can hunt down the beneficial reuse policy that was revised late last year, I believe, and send that your way, Diana. That has a lot of the restrictions as to what can go into these particular permits, which might help you, you know, tease out some of the details in regards to the standing stone permit. And these beneficial reuse permits are all throughout the state. I believe there's over 60
Yes.
60 locations where they've applied for these beneficial reuse permits. So it's not just a Bradford County thing. It's all over the country. So
And this is
okay.
Kelsey. I was just going to ask if you had connected to either of the couple who had done a lot of the work with the permit, general, like the whole changes to this permit before. Sorry, that was a very terrible way of asking. But have you talked to anyone from Mountain Watershed Association or Environmental Integrity Project, or can we connect you to them? I know that those were two of the main groups who were engaged on this issue.
What was the name of the first group? That was
Mountain Watershed Association.
okay. Okay, I'll check. Yeah, I'll check their websites. They may have some background that I need.
Well, I have a contact at Environmental Integrity Project who we could maybe just ask for a streamlined what you maybe should be looking for.
Yeah. Just what should we be looking for? You know, now that
Okay.
I've got this data from DEP, what should I be looking for?
Yeah. Let me follow up with you tomorrow, and we can maybe put you in contact with that person and see if they can help out, since the timeline I know is kind of quick. So
I appreciate it.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions that they would like to ask before we finish up for the evening? Well, if you think of anything else that you would like to ask afterwards, oh, hold on, we've got some stuff going on in the chat. Oh, no, just thanks. If anyone has any other questions that you think of afterwards, like I said, our emails are up on the screen. And when we send out all of the follow-up resources, you'll have our email addresses once again. We're all one giant chapter here. We should be working together to make sure that we have all of the resources that we need. So thank you very much for popping on this evening. Sorry that it ran a little bit long, but when you're talking about big things, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And look forward to that survey from Kelsey about Pipeline 101 conversation for sometime either later this month or early next month. It should be exciting. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
bye, y'all, take care.